To start this video, I tried to look up the etymology of the phrase jumping on the bandwagon, but I ended up getting distracted and reading at length about the strange life and very horrifying and tragic death of the conjoined twins who worked with P.T. Barnum. This is tangentially related because P.T. Barnum is credited with coining the word bandwagon because it first appeared in print in his autobiography, and today I am jumping on the midnight mass bandwagon. It is super rare that I talk about something contemporary, but after finishing Midnight Mass, I texted like everybody I know and asked if they had watched it so I could talk about it with someone, and nobody had. So here we are. This video will contain full spoilers for all the episodes of Midnight Mass. All of it. The whole series. You've been warned. Okay, so my parents sent me to Catholic school from kindergarten through 8th grade. And starting in 5th grade, I began insisting that I was not going to the Catholic high school. And my parents ended up being fine with that because the tuition was very expensive. Anyway, if you want your kids to grow up non-religious, but still with like a weird, complicated relationship with religion, send them to Catholic school, because I am not religious, but I love religious mythology. I read the Bible in school, the entire Bible, and I have a favorite very weird Bible story that I might tack on to the end of this video. But as it was, I had a lot of questions. Why did angels kill babies? Why did Noah pass out drunk and naked, but then exiled his son for putting a blanket over him? What was going on in Sodom, and why did Lot's wife turn into a pillar of salt? And the teachers were like, hey, why don't we talk some more about the loaves and fishes? So I love shows like Midnight Mass. And I looked it up, and the creator, Mike Flanagan, seems to have had kind of a similar religious background as me. So, yay! Solidarity. If you're watching this video, I'm going to assume that you probably watched the entire show. This show has a lot of layers and a lot of complexity, and it is really hard to summarize in a succinct manner, but I will still try. Although I'm willing to bet that this summary will probably still take a while, so if you want to jump right to the review and save yourself some time, please jump to the timestamp the timestamp that has appeared on the screen now. The show opens with Riley Flynn just having killed a woman in a drunk driving accident. Not to be confused with Riley Finn, Buffy's human commando boyfriend. Is commando the right word for like a soldier? Because right now all I can think of is commando being the word for not wearing any underwear. Riley Flynn goes to jail for several years, and the main events of the series begin when Riley is released from prison and he returns home to Crockett, which is a small, isolated, nearly defunct fishing island off the coast of Maine. He has a strained relationship with his father, his mother wants him to resume going to church, and his younger brother is an altar boy. Riley's return coincides with the arrival of a new priest named Monsignor Paul. He is replacing the island's previous priest, Father Pruitt, who left to go to Jerusalem on a journey to the Holy Land. However, Father Pruitt had very severe Alzheimer's, and according to Monsignor Paul, he is currently in the hospital and is very likely not going to be released anytime soon. After Monsignor Paul's arrival, a bunch of miracles start happening in Crockett. There is a young girl named Lisa who was paralyzed in what I'll just summarize as a hunting accident. who has been in a wheelchair, who regains the ability to walk. The town doctor's mom, Mabel, is also very old with very severe Alzheimer's, and her mind is restored and she begins getting younger and younger. Riley's dad had back problems, which have now healed. Riley's mom no longer needs glasses. Just generally, the people of Crockett are starting to heal and get progressively younger and healthier. But Riley is kind of suspicious of the Monsignor. He can sort of tell that something is off. There are a bunch of interconnecting interpersonal storylines to get you really invested in these characters throughout the series. There is a sheriff who's a relative newcomer to Crockett. He is a Muslim man, and his son, Ali, starts to want to go to the Catholic Church after hearing about all of the miracles. There is an obnoxious religious lady named Bev Keane who is super racist and very self-righteous and definitely poisons a dog. Riley reconnects with an old girlfriend named Erin Green who is currently pregnant.
Hi there.
And then is suddenly not pregnant, with no medical signs that she was ever pregnant.
Your tests are all negative.
I know, I lost the baby.
No, I mean, your HCG levels are normal. I don't see any evidence you were pregnant at all.
Then everything just implodes. We discover that Monsignor Paul is Father Pruitt. When on his pilgrimage to Jerusalem, the old man got lost and confused, and he wandered out into the desert during a CGI sandstorm, and the sand uncovered some sort of ancient ruin. In the ruin, Father Pruitt encountered this.
Angel.
He thinks it is an angel. Okay. The angel feeds on him and then gives its blood to Father Pruitt. The angel's blood restores his youth and heals his mind, and Father Pruitt wakes up the next morning young again. The angel can't go into the sunlight, so Father Pruitt smuggles him in a trunk from Jerusalem back to Crockett because he believes that this town that has struggled and really been beaten down just needs an angel.
I knew the journey would be long, but I knew where this angel was needed, and so I'd travel and I'd wait. The angel would catch up. Travel, wait, fear.
Turns out, he has been putting the angel's blood into the communion wine, and the restorative properties of that blood have been the source of all of the town's miracles. Father Pruitt has been consuming the blood himself this whole time, and he seems to be getting progressively sicker, until at one point he suddenly drops dead.
Father?
Oh, God, not again. What's wrong with him?
But then he comes back to life, and now he can't go in the sunlight, and he also has a hunger for blood. He feels that he has been blessed by God, and he plans to have the entire congregation join him in this holy, eternal life during Midnight Mass on Easter with the help of Bev Keane and several other townsfolk who are in on his secret. Riley happens to walk in on Father Pruitt praying while the angel pours some of its blood into like a decanter. So the angel attacks Riley, feeds on him, kills him, and turns him as well. When he wakes up, Father Pruitt is like, "Welcome to salvation! You have been chosen by God."
Have some courage. God chose you.
Yay! And he tells Riley everything.
You've been taken back as well. Taken back to your best self. Your peak self, your perfect self as God wanted you. I just had a lot further to go than you did. There's a lot further to go.
Riley kind of just walks out of there very overwhelmed and seemingly a little confused. So he goes and gets Aaron, and the two of them row a boat out onto open water.
So, you've told me that story. You brought me out here. You brought us out here where there is nowhere for me to go.
He tells her the whole story and warns her to run. And then the sun comes up and Riley just bursts into flames and lets himself die. We do see that he did find peace, though, and some sort of internal forgiveness for killing that girl in his accident. Aaron goes to the town doctor, who actually believes her.
Let me tell you something crazy while we're at it. I mean, what's a little crazy between friends, right?
Both because of the doctor's mom's miraculous recovery, but also because Aaron's blood test burst into flame in the daylight. Was it just Aaron's blood test? I think her mom's blood test might have done the same. Surprisingly, the doctor's mom, Mabel, despite being restored to good health and youth, is also on board to try and take down the church. I love Mabel. More on that later. However, there's nothing that they can do. Under Pruitt's orders, his followers disable the boats, they knock down the power, and they take out cell service. So everyone has no choice but to go to midnight mass. Martyrs follow, and from morn to set. And at midnight mass, all hell breaks loose. Pruitt has one of his dedicated followers drink rat poison in front of the entire congregation so they can see him die and then be resurrected.
When they took away the stone from the cave where the dead man was lying,
his followers hand out rat poison to everybody, and many people are drinking it eagerly.
We have to do something. We have to do something. No. It's okay. Don't drink it. Please. You don't need to do that.
The angel appears. The sheriff's son, Ali, says that he is going to choose God, and he drinks the poison while the sheriff screams.
I choose God. No!
It's a horrifying scene because all these people drank the poison and are just dying violently. Aaron, the doctor, Mabel, Lisa, the sheriff, and Riley's family all try to escape. Once the dead people begin waking up, it turns into a bloodbath. They begin feeding on the people who haven't turned, and then turning those people who start feeding on other people, and it is just chaos. Mabel shoots Pruitt right in the head, which is awesome. But then she is carried off right out the door by the angel. And Riley's dad doesn't get a name, I'm just gonna call him Riley's dad. He also does not make it out, and he tells the others to just go, so the rest of the people flee. Pruitt wanted to keep the turned congregation within the church so he could teach them what to do and how to control their urge to feed.
Monsignor said that we should close the doors before they wake up, so we can guide them, orient them so that this wouldn't happen.
But Bev opens the church doors anyway. she feels that all the good people on the island came to Mass, and everyone else deserves whatever happens to them.
Those who've been coming to church and taking communion, they have nothing to fear tonight. As for the rest of them, let God sort them out.
Riley's mom also ends up sacrificing herself to buy the group a little more time, and the rest of them decide that the kids, Lisa and Riley's younger brother, should get in a canoe and row themselves out onto open water to try and escape and stay alive until dawn. The rest of the adults in the group realize that they're not going to survive this, but the best that they can do is to make sure that this contagion doesn't spread.
It isn't about us anymore. It's about everyone else in the world, dying for people we haven't even met. No greater love than that.
So they start burning all of the boats. Meanwhile, Bev decides to just burn down all of the houses because they don't need houses anymore. All of the town's residents can seek shelter from the sunlight in the church's rec center. Mabel resurrects and she goes to see Pruitt, who is now realizing that this is all spun way out of control and he regrets his actions. Also, Mabel and Pruitt both had an affair when they were younger, and the doctor is actually his daughter.
God, am I proud of you. I'm sorry that we never told you, your mother and I, but I love you so much. And I've been so proud of you, and I just wish that we had gotten to know each other.
With the impending sunrise, the townsfolk all gather at the rec center, and meanwhile, our good guys are trying to burn down the rec center in time. The doctor, who's there pouring gasoline in the church, is shot in front of both of her parents, Mabel and Pruitt, and in their grief, they burn down the church and take the doctor's body and carry it to the location that was her favorite place on the island, where they intend to just sit and wait for sunrise. The sheriff is shot by Bev while trying to light the rec center on fire, and his son, Ali, who had previously chosen the church and chosen God, I think Ali didn't feed. I would have to go back and kind of watch that whole sequence over, but I think he didn't feed, which is kind of an important distinction in the characterization of these different people. But he decides ultimately to choose his father, and he is the one to burn down the rec center. Meanwhile, the angel is feeding on Erin, and she is keeping the angel distracted while she uses a knife to tear up the membrane of its wings so that if it tries to fly away, it won't get very far. With sunrise imminent and escape impossible, and all of the island's structures burnt to the ground, the townsfolk have no other option. They stand together and they sing and they just wait for death to come. Oh, I was to be nearer. The sun rises and they all turn to dust while the two kids watch from their canoe that's out on the water. That description leaves out a lot. Like, for example, at the end, despite her belief in religion and all the good she was doing, Bev tries to bury herself in the sand to escape the sunrise, but she ultimately fails. The kids in the canoe see the angel trying to fly away, but they doubt that it'll be able to make it to safety before the sun rises. The sheriff and his son perform a Muslim prayer while the sheriff dies from his gunshot wounds and then his son burns up in the sunlight. Also, the last line of the series is Lisa saying,
I can't feel my legs.
Like, there's a lot. Even if you watch this video, go watch the show. So, my thoughts on this series. First of all, I love all of the ambiguity surrounding the angel. They point out in the show that biblical angels were described as terrifying. So this could very well be a biblical angel. But considering that it kills people and turns other people into vampires, it does seem to have a very nefarious purpose. Also, the angel doesn't speak. It seems very animalistic, but it also walks on two legs. It wears clothes. It understands dramatic timing.
Sheriff, please.
Behold.
What is its deal? We don't know. Where did it come from? We don't know. It has wings, so it could be a completely inhuman creature. Or this could just be the final evolution of that form, and everyone on the island would have looked like that eventually. But I really do enjoy the fact that they pulled the justifications for this angel being a terrifying vampiric creature right from the Bible. Like, I love the idea that the Book of Enoch was actually about aliens, that, like, Enoch was taken aboard an alien spaceship and he was shown all their space stuff. And the whole time he was just like, wow, are you guys angels? Is this heaven? And they were like, no, buddy, and just sent him back down. But he wanted to see heaven and angels, so he saw heaven and angels. Sort of like Father Pruitt looked at that thing and saw an angel. By the way, they never say vampire in this show.
Say it out loud. Say it.
No, Edward, they won't. One really interesting thing we see are these wood plaques that detail Pruitt's story about meeting the angel. They're clearly representative of the Stations of the Cross, but they're also the only purely metaphorical thing that we see. The only thing we see that's not supposed to be real. Well, that we know of, anyway. The twist that Father Pruitt was putting the angel's blood in the communion wine, and that was the source of the miracles, that was perfect. Although I did guess the twist that Monsignor Paul was Father Pruitt as soon as they showed Father Pruitt, and I realized that it was the same actor, just in prosthetics and makeup. But I did begin to suspect that there was something with the blood as soon as we saw the angel give Father Pruitt his blood. I was like, oh no, that's gonna mean something. But I was still just a little bit off. I thought that Pruitt was going to have been putting his own blood in the communion wine, which would add just a little bit more weight to the lines that the priest says when he's quoting Jesus, that, you know, this is my blood, the blood of a new and everlasting covenant, blah, blah, blah. I didn't really think that the angel was going to be, like, appearing and pouring some of its blood in a decanter every couple of days. Also, one key point about Pruitt's character is that he only put the blood in the communion wine. When he was having Riley come to AA meetings at the church, I had wondered if the secret reasoning for that was because he was putting the blood in the coffee. But he didn't. This is not a situation where Father Pruitt was just determined to get this blood into people at any cost. He only put it in the communion wine. It creates just a very fine distinction for his character. It shows that he pretty much bought into his own press about, you know, the blood and miracles and a covenant and whatnot. Speaking of Riley, it is wild to me that this show kind of set him up as the main character and then killed him several episodes before the end. Like, I know that it was kind of an ensemble piece with a very big cast and a lot of characters, but we started with Riley, and they kind of set him up as the primary character that you were supposed to sort of follow and relate to. I read an interview with the creator, and he was saying that when he first started developing this series, it started out as Riley versus Pruitt. But then as development went on, he realized that it was actually a story about Aaron versus Bev. And I do think that there are elements of that there, like when Bev compares Aaron to her mother.
You know, your mother used to put back the empties. Right back into this closet, half of them filled with nothing but water sometimes. She was so against waste.
Even though, like, her mother was this awful alcoholic and she was very abusive to Aaron.
And here you threw it away. Isn't that just a gas?
You know, it is funny because at home, she never met a bottle she couldn't empty.
And then when they have that meeting with the parents and Bev just kind of keeps steamrolling Aaron. But I do think that they really could have done a better job about establishing conflict between those two characters within the first couple episodes, because they don't really seem like rival pillars carrying the series. They just seem like both teachers at this school who don't really get along. The actress who played Bev was excellent because I hated her. I think you could level a criticism that the character was very one-dimensional, but I don't know. I think I've known people like Bev. Not to that degree, like not to the dog poisoning degree, but like my 8th grade math teacher once asked the class who invented the Pythagorean theorem, and we all answered Pythagoras. And she just so smugly told us that no, we were wrong. God invented the Pythagorean theorem because he inspired Pythagoras. Every single Monday, she would make us each write yes or no on a piece of paper, anonymously. And it was yes or no on whether we went to church that weekend, and then she would collect all of the slips of paper in this little bucket, and then she would go through one by one and read yes or no or yes or no, and every single no just got this self-righteous speech in math class. There are so many just awful people who wield religion like a baseball bat to just beat down others and make them feel better about themselves. And Bev is kind of a caricature of that, but I do see a lot of familiarity in just her tone and her behaviors. There is one scene, though, where I related to Bev a little bit. When she walks in to Father Pruitt's house and discovers that he just murdered a guy and drank his blood, her reaction is just this, okay.
Okay.
Here's the thing.
Lord. Okay.
And that is exactly my reaction in like weird and stressful situations. I also love the scene where she grabs a couple of Pruitt's more dedicated followers and tells them that they have to dispose of the body. And their reaction also feels very legit to me. They're just like, but that's Joe.
Tie an anchor to it and drop it 5 miles out.
But
Yes, Wade, what would you like to say?
This series also has a lot of excellent foreshadowing. Riley has this recurring dream about being on a boat out in open water and waiting for sunrise that seems to kind of foretell his upcoming death. Monsignor Paul brings that weird big trunk with him when he comes to town, and all the residents keep seeing some sort of big winged creature all around the place. At one point, one of the altar boys walks in on Monsignor Paul, pouring something out of a flask into the communion wine.
Lighter. Let's go!
Monsignor Paul also seems to know a lot about the town and the people. And also, Mabel, when she first sees him, she calls him John, which was Father Pruitt's first name. This was before we, the audience, knew that twist. And then Monsignor Paul just plays it off like, oh, we had the same tailor.
John?
No, she thinks you're Monsignor Pruitt. Sorry, she's confused.
That's an easy mistake. Same tailor.
Also, the fact that Monsignor Paul had a newspaper clipping hung up on the wall that had a photo of a young Father Pruitt who looks exactly like him was giving me some real Portrait of Barnabas Collins vibes.
Oh, madam, if you would, you may tell her that it's Barnabas Collins.
Throughout the show, I didn't really have a favorite character, but then as we got closer to the end, like within the last 2 episodes, suddenly a dark horse charged to the front of the race, and it was Mabel. I mean, I did have a soft spot for her in all of the preceding episodes as the mom character with Alzheimer's. But then when she's healed and she starts getting younger, her daughter, the doctor, takes Mabel to Mass. And during the homily, while the priest is preaching all of this fire and brimstone,
It is a war, and there will be casualties, and we must be soldiers. God will ask horrible things of you. Horrible.
Mabel is just looking around like, what the hell?
Just look at what he asked of his own son. Just look at what Jesus had to endure today. We have to call it the new covenant.
Then, when Mass is over, she charges out of there and tells her daughter that that is not her church and she is never to go back there.
Mom, stop. I don't want you going back there ever again. What? That is not my church. That is not the man I knew.
And even though this weird angel blood is the thing that healed her, Mabel is 100% on board to take down the church. And she is also the one to pick up the gun and shoot Father Pruitt right in the head. Of course, when Mabel turns, she doesn't feed. She, at one point, has her daughter dying in her arms from a gunshot wound, and there's, blood everywhere, and still, Mabel does not feed. In the end, Mabel chooses to die in the sunlight, and it doesn't even really seem like much of a choice. Like, she knew that this was what she had to do. And I also think that the actress did a really good job with the old lady mannerisms and the intonations, even when Mabel's age had regressed and the actress no longer needed to wear all the makeup and the prosthetics. Also, her acting in the scene where her daughter dies was very solid. It made me feel some level of emotion in my cold, dead heart. Also, Mabel is the one who knocks over the candle to burn down the church. She's great. My biggest criticism of the show is the monologues. It felt like a stage play at those points. You're never going to just sit there silently as someone tells you their entire life story. That's weird. You're going to interject. You're going to ask questions. It's only polite. When Riley and Aaron were talking about death, first Riley monologues his beliefs. And then Erin monologues her beliefs. And the whole time, I was just like, come on, let's get back to all the weird stuff. The death monologues also definitely poked right at my existential anxiety, but that's probably something that's more unique to my brain. I would have liked this show just a little bit more with about 75% fewer monologues. I do think that the monologues work when they're coming from Father Pruitt because he is a priest and priests give homilies. Basically, they just stand in front of the church and monologue at everybody. So it's something that you would kind of expect from that character. Also, the actor is just very engaging and charismatic, and you kind of just want him to, keep talking. All of the other characters could have had their monologues trimmed down, maybe worked into the narrative in just other ways. Oh, also, not a criticism, but I had thought that Lisa's line at the end about not being able to feel her legs meant that the angel had died and that we had gotten some resolution on that. But I was reading interviews with the creator, and apparently, no, I was wrong. It's just supposed to mean that the blood is starting to recede in her system and that she'll eventually be okay. Overall, I do really recommend watching this series if you haven't seen it yet. I do think that different people will get different things out of it depending on your personal experience with religion, but I mean, that's how it is with everything. Your mileage may vary. Okay, so real quick, my favorite Bible story. Although I'll preface that by saying that my real favorite Bible stories are in the Apocrypha, detailing Jesus's superhero origins. It's great. I love telling people about it. But my favorite story that appears in the Bible actually appears in 2 books of the Bible, so you know it's legit. So my favorite story is about Jesus and the fig tree. Basically, Jesus and the apostles are walking from one place to another, as they usually did, and along the way, the road is lined with fig trees. And Jesus is like, man, I could really go for some figs right now, but figs are out of season. So he walks up to one of the trees and is like, hey, I want some figs. And again, figs are out of season, so the tree has no figs. And Jesus gets really mad at this tree. He's like, I want some figs. But still, no figs. Out of season. So then Jesus says, fine, I curse you so that you will never again bear fruit. And then storms off. And all the apostles are like, whoa. So they go to the place where they were going, and then when they're leaving again, they're coming back down that road lined with the fig trees, and they see that tree that Jesus cursed, and it's dead now.